For years, many of us who've been investigating the Finders cult have wondered if there was some kind of connection, whether tangential or direct, to the Epstein network from the Finders cult. And if you don't know about the Finders cult, go to theconsciousresistance.com and visit my documentary. All of the reports I've done over the years where I was investigating the Finders, from my original 7-part investigation to the documentary, to my subsequent reports, to the fact that shortly after my documentary, the FBI started dropping a bunch of documents relating to the Finders. And we've learned so many things over the years. But that has been one of the threads, the questions people have been asking, like, is there some connection to the Epstein network and the Finders cult? Again, maybe it's not in those terms where you're going to find a document that says the Finders cult evolved into Ghislaine Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, Jean-Luc Brunel, Epstein, etc. But still, there have been wonders and concerns if there is some connection. So I started to go to the Epstein files and I searched the Finders, just, see what popped up with the Finders. And when I did, I found some interesting things. So this is what this next story is all about. I found this one website called finderscourse.com, which, as you see here, it's kind of not all showing up that great, but it's a website by the Willow Group Incorporated, and I haven't been able to find anything about them, that claims to be, about helping mental clarity. They talk about seekers and peakers. Interestingly, there used to be a cult called the Seekers, and some people believe the Finders' original name was the Seekers. But this whole thing is all about, elevating human consciousness. And look at the website, as you can see, it's really not even there anymore. I think that most of it has just been kind of deleted. You can find different things in the Wayback Machine. Like this whole page is pretty much blank. I'm also using a privacy browser, so it's probably blocking some of it. But the point is, it seems kind of new agey, talking about like mental clarity and how you can become a finder by taking the Finders course, where seekers find. Kind of interesting. And the reason this came up is because when I searched the Finders, this man, Dr. Jeffrey A. Martin, who they say is the director for the Center for the Study of Non-Symbolic Consciousness, research professor at the Transformative Technology Lab of Sophia University, which is just a bunch of different, he's involved in technology, psychology, cognitive science, neuroscience, allegedly a best-selling author, an award-winning educator. I think this guy is just a lot of fluff, and he's kind of pumping himself up. You can see there's like a TED Talk he did. He's been featured at Deepak Chopra's Scientists and Sages conference. He was covered by the South China Morning Post one time. He's the founding director of the Center for Study of Non-Symbolic Consciousness, which doesn't seem to be anything. So he started a bunch of organizations and he's the head of them. It makes him sound like he's really, doing something special. But I found it interesting when I was searching for the Finders that it leads to this guy and his Finders course. Now, again, I haven't found anything that directly connects Jeffrey A. Martin to the original Finders, but a lot of the language and things he discussed, it really does mirror some of the things we know about the original Finders cult and Marion Petty, how they talked about, and even my interviews with Robert Terrell, who was the right-hand man of Marion Petty, who worked with him directly. And basically, there's sort of efforts to elevate consciousness. At least that's the way that they pretended. They said we were just a radical group, that were trying to do things better than previous generations and raise kids independently and stuff like that. There's definitely some overlap in the type of language about of transformation. And it also kind of goes back to the human potential movement. That's a whole other conversation. But nevertheless, I started searching for Jeffrey A. Martin after I found him listed in the Epstein files. And there's a bunch of different mentions, but I'm going to show you the ones that I think are worth looking at. This is an email between Jeffrey A. Martin on Monday, June 12, 2017. So this is well after Jeffrey Epstein had been arrested in the original arrest, and well after we know that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in shady shit. And Jeffrey A. Martin apparently didn't care. Hi, Jeffrey. Sorry for the delay. It's a bit crazy here. I'm still looking for a schedule hole with New Mexico overlap. My Skype is here. Hi, Jeffrey. I'm in Shanghai to speak at a couple conferences, then in India. And so there, it's showing him he's trying to connect with Epstein and get him on a call to do Skype. And then goes back and forth. Jeffrey Epstein says, Skype, JEE vacation, which was Jeffrey Epstein's Skype name. Are you in New York anytime soon? And then it shows how basically these two men were connected by Deepak Chopra. And you can see how the email from Jeffrey Martin is saying, thanks, Deepak. Hope you're enjoying TSC. Hi, Jeff. Your name has crossed my path several times in recent years. It's nice to finally connect. Much love, Jeffrey. And so again, Deepak Chopra is the one who connected the two of them together. We don't know where it went. We can see over the years that Jeffrey A. Martin is clearly trying to get Epstein's attention, and Epstein is on his email list. That's how I first found the Finders when I searched for it, is that Jeffrey Epstein was on that Finders course mailing list. But then I started searching Jeffrey A. Martin, and you find these private communications between the two men. This is happening shortly after the last one. This is Skype between Jeffrey Epstein and Jeffrey A. Martin. Jeffrey Epstein said, how did great Steve go? It's going great, thanks. Another moving wall experience, though this less extreme this time. Any wall experience qualifies as good, as long as you're not running into it. I've been thinking about our conversation. If you have someone walk through a wall in front of you, what will you do with it? Epstein says, I've had 40 or more individuals, none except Deepak's last person, did anything close to what you described. It's not Elon as far as we know, it's somebody else, held his hand in front of mine and I could feel a buzzing in mine. Great. Jeffrey A. Martin, that seems pretty simple. I view nothing as out of bounds. I would look for mechanism, just like telepathy. This is Epstein. Maybe it's something we don't have an explanation for, but it's merely counterintuitive. So they're talking about telepathy. They're talking about like spiritual kind of paranormal experiences. And Epstein says, would you like to Skype? I'm not good at typing. Give me a couple of minutes. I just finished the treatment here. Nothing more remarkable than the lives that you and I live. This is more rare and odd that it is so compared to most. And that's Epstein telling him that. And then Jeffrey A. Martin, he goes ahead and points out a name, Ravi Mantha. We're going to search that real quick just so I can show you who this guy is. He's an Indian politician, Indian businessman, who is also being outed in the Epstein files. He was an advisor to Modi and India. If you search Ravi Mantha and Epstein, you'll see that he's been in the news lately. He's kind of having his own issues over there in India. And Hyderabad businessman Ravi Mantha linked to Epstein files. So it's interesting. This businessman from India who's in the Epstein files, Jeffrey A. Martin says Ravi Mantha, and then there's a whole redacted sentence and then something redacted, and then room 304. Epstein says, I cannot get through. Hi, Jeffrey, check your email and this will make sense. Username, jmje@protonmail.com. Hope all is great. I'm just in a brief moment online, then we'll be offline again. Can't log in, says incorrect. Now, this is where it's interesting that Epstein, basically Jeffrey A. Martin had created an email address on Proton Mail for Jeffrey Epstein, and he's sort of like telling him how to use it. And basically he was telling him like, I'm going to send the password to your Skype. I'm going to send this, as I'll show you guys in a moment. This guy was clearly worried about his communications later on being read. He says, he's talking about meeting up with people. I'm back in the US. Now it's your turn. But that was just the first notification of this Jeffrey Epstein email, Proton Mail. And he's telling him like something about room 304. It appears from what I can tell that they were trying to meet up in person. So let's go on further. Jeffrey A. Martin on June 21st, 2017. Here's the full signature from the manager's emails. Headed to bed tonight, but you're entirely too interesting for the universe to keep us apart much longer. Call anytime. If I'm in the room, I answer. In 1 hour, if it's okay with you. So, they're trying to connect while he's in that hotel room. Then it goes here. This is July 2nd, 2017, Jeffrey Martin to Jeffrey Epstein. Hi, Jeffrey. I've been thinking about you and your quest for an experience that can lead to a mechanism. Qigong isn't surprising, giving Shinlin's frustrations with this research in that area. What other things have you tried to find it with? Any similar projects? And we don't know what he's trying to find, but he's trying to find some type of experience. I assume probably the equally unimpressive parapsychology world at a minimum. Also, who were the 40 or so people you've tried so far? Ballpark is fine for more than a list. Though if you have kept a list, that is okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of the dry holes dotting your landscape so far. And Epstein says, here's the things he's tried. Brain work, extensive imaging, Harvard, psychology, fMRI, EEG, complex systems, artificial life, Santa Fe Institute, Qi, Tsinghua University, acupuncture, large groups, MGH, kinesiology, NYU, Chinese herbal medicines, placebo, Karolinska, Harvard, illusions, optical, oral, perceptual. But at the end of this, zero impact and much blah, blah. That's why I'm always open to controlled experiments. So Epstein was clearly interested in the paranormal sort of, edge of research, as we know with transhumanism and other things. Now, this is Dr. Jeffrey Martin emailing Jeffrey Epstein. The can't miss conference of the year if you're into consciousness. Hi, Jeffrey. Next weekend, I'll be keynoting one of the coolest and most mind-blowing conferences in the consciousness space if you're in Chicago, and you should definitely come. And so he goes on there talking about, again, he's like telling Epstein this is about the Psychotronics Association annual conference. More discussions on that. Then July 12th, 2017, Jeffrey Martin to Jeffrey Epstein. Hi, Jeffrey. Given your interest in the stranger aspects of my PNSE research, a lot of thought while here in India. You seem to get sued a lot. And this is where he starts to really wants to hide his information. He says, you seem to get sued a lot, and I don't like documents showing up in discovery processes. I've written up my thoughts on what you're interested in, created an account on a secure email service, and had that account send an email to itself. That's about as safe as information transfer gets in our age. To read it, just log into the same account. I'll send you the username via Skype so the full login isn't in one message. So please don't forward it or save a local copy. You can find it here. So he tells Epstein, go to Proton Mail, log in. The username is in his Skype chat, and then use this password. And guys, I've tried this. I don't think this account exists anymore, but I've gone to Proton Mail and I've used the JME at Proton Mail that he showed in the other messages. And I've used this password and I've tried numerous times and different variations. It didn't work. But he says, when you're reviewed it enough, just delete the message. I'll come along later and close the account. So he probably did close the account, as he said there, but it clearly shows that there was a Proton Mail that this Jeffrey A. Martin created just for him and Jeffrey Epstein to privately communicate, because he was worried some things were going to show up in documents like this. So yeah, and this is just them again talking about all kinds of shady, not shady necessarily, but about being interested in PNE research and telepathy and stuff like that. Now this is Skype messages between the two of them and more people, but Jeffrey A. Martin's listed in here like 30 times. Jeffrey Martin headed back to Albuquerque from the 18th to the 14th if you're around. Epstein, Epstein says, possible, just left yesterday from there. Just let me know if you pop back. I'm going to do a bit of research on Amma and Santa Fe for a couple days. Did you see her there? She can produce interesting effects on, for, in front of some people. Never saw, Jeffrey says. Might consider it. Not sure when she's there, just that there's an overlap. So they go back and forth again. There's nothing really groundbreaking here, but it's just showing that they're talking about sort of different types of technology. Jeffrey Martin says to Jeffrey Epstein, we've been working with some new non-invasive brain stem tech that increases this by double-digit percentages. I've been selling it to top people in the Valley whose jobs relate to this, but hadn't thought about finance-related people. It's a side thing of another much more important project, so it hasn't gotten much thought other than using it to bring in big blocks of cash from the Valley. What it does is largely considered impossible. Having said that, the military will be a big customer because they have a related problem with soldiers not being able to tell who the enemy are in civilian villages. It's getting training improvements 20 to 30% for the right now. Seems completely impossible to them. And so he's talking about spotting difficult to find patterns in the world. Like, how do you do that? And they have some sort of non-invasive brain stimulation technique that they're saying can help with that, and that they're going to sell it to the military. I mean, wow, it's pretty wild stuff. And so again, this is a Jeffrey Martin who is head of the Finders course, which there's not a lot of information online about. He doesn't seem to have much of a major social media presence. So to me, it makes it all the more odd that this is something that is popping up in the Jeffrey Epstein emails. Why did Jeffrey Epstein think he was worthy of his time? Why did he give him so much time and attention? I don't know, guys.